Howdy, everybody. Once you join in, catch me later, on the ice. Welcome once again to Escaping Dystopia. Today is August 23rd, 2017. Did he really say that? Is the title of our episode for this evening. So, what's going on, man? Still figuring out. I just got a new Facebook update. I'm actually probably going to do one of these shows via the Twitter soon. I was going to try and get some stuff. Going to do some background for the show, because everybody cares about how big my show is. It's huge. So, what are we going to talk about tonight? Same thing I was talking about earlier. No, just kidding. So, quick rundown of the shizzo for those who catch up later and for those who watch it now. White Supremacy Ascendant. Kind of told you about this. We're going to talk a little bit more about the events that happened this last week and some of the responses to that. Things that are going on. The campaign speech last night in Arizona. I've got a couple clips from that. A little bit about the Antifa and a quote from a nice philosopher, if you're into that kind of stuff. Some more about Bannon being out. This was a surprise to me, and I'm going to eat some crow on that one. Because, I didn't think that was going to happen. Some Eclipse Talk, because everybody cares about the eclipse. More U.S. Navy deaths. This is pretty unfortunate. We'll talk a little bit more about this. It's unfortunate in a couple ways. And then the civilian deaths from our war on terror continue to mount. And I do think this might be one of the big things that we're all being distracted from, as it were. Because, people talk about a lot of, oh, this is a distraction from that, and that's a distraction from this, and this from that, and what about this thing over here and the other? Just kind of the general discord of the day. That's how you have this kind of weird stuff happen. If there was a lot of general consensus about reality, I don't think we'd be having some of the issues that we are. But, kind of one of the themes of the show and why I like to talk about it, because, you can communicate, I think, a little bit more sometimes this way. But anybody has any questions about what I got to say or what I'm talking about, or just general observations, of course, always feel free to chime in. All right, and with that little bit of introduction, told you so. So there was a choice on the ballot this last year, and a lot of people didn't quite understand what it was, because they didn't kind of know what folks were running on. And this whole white supremacy thing was a part of the Trump campaign the whole time. Making sure not to alienate these voters, trying to talk to them straightforward in ways that they understood, using enough of that coded language. And with Trump, he wasn't even coded sometimes, which is why he was so on the side of these folks. And there's a lot of deep anti-immigrant sentiment in the rural parts of real America, parts that I drove through this last week visiting Yellowstone, up in Wyoming, definitely some Trump country up there. And it's just unfortunate to see this take on and it's odd too, because this is what's really interesting about the current form of this, right? Because a lot of this was the idea of Spencer and those folks a while back, that you wouldn't have, those dancing in the street, marching, making Hitler sign, KKK people, but you'd have the wearing khakis, works in IT, straightforward kind of people, and just infiltrate. And they are. There's a lot of... These aren't terribly unpopular opinions. Does that change their worth? No, I don't think so. So it's that undercurrent's always been there, and just it's pulling out really, really hard right now. And we'll see. It's curious to see online from kind of you have the troll aspect of it, and of course the alt-right guys with their well, what about this and what about that constant arguments. But it is good to see the general wide condemnation. However, until this condemnation actually gets going and has an actual effect, right? Until there's enough to change this course. And there was, and this is why, I'll talk about Bannon being out. I don't think there was a tie directly. I do think behind the scenes, this is one of the things that he was trying to do. And I said, actually, last week that I would take him a little bit more seriously on this if Bannon was gone. And, of course, that includes Miller and Gorka. Because these are actual people who were in the administration making policy. But anyway, so we've seen this now come to the fourth. It's become a big question. And then our president, how he chose to address it was to go to Arizona and give a campaign speech. And that's what's up next. This was really weird on a number of levels. I have the transcript up, and I've kind of been going through some of the bits of it, and I've read a number of news stories about it, and it's that same kind of rambly, talking to the crowd bits. He was, asked not to actually give this speech, and there ended up being a little bit of interaction between some of the protesters and police ultimately about the rally, because it was a campaign rally. And this is what's so odd about it, right? See, normally for all of my previous life and most of, I think, definitely all of the history of this country and in the mass media environment, when you have these kind of scuffles and interactions, our president would be someone going out there and trying to speak for all of the country, right? To talk to everybody, and do that in a way that tried to bring everybody together. But what happened down in Arizona last night was nothing. It was none of that. It was entirely a campaign event. Which, again, having a campaign event 7 months into a 4-year term, before the midterms, having a campaign for yourself, where you spend a lot of time attacking Republicans, it's very odd. I do think, and I mentioned this before in the show, that there's a big fight going on right now for control of the GOP, and that's what I do believe is the long-term strategy. And the longer that Trump stays in power, the more the GOP will have to coalesce around him to get this base that is very active voting base. He went off a lot on the media and his fellow Republicans, both of which I think really keep hurting him. I understand the broad strategy of trying to utterly discredit the media, but it's just one of those things where the guy's just utterly obsessed, and it keeps you from getting stuff done, and that's the thing. And while he's also telling his people that he is getting stuff done, you continue to see this slide in his popularity, because even those who want to give him credit, who have been true believers, starting to see that stuff isn't getting done. And then when he's, claiming that he's out here, I'm trying to unite everybody, and I said, great things, that I'm trying to bring everybody together, and other people are like, what? Because you're not doing that. And he's like, well, I said those words the other day, and he spent like 20 minutes of this speech, like, defending his own stuff on here, and when you're just that defensive, it doesn't work. And then he had this to say in the speech, and this is one of the things that he got as one of his applause lines from his crew. And in the proud tradition of America's great leaders, from George Washington, please don't take his statue down, please. Does anybody want George Washington's statue? No. Is that sad? Sorry, I'm reading this. Let me move this so I can read it a little better. Is that sad? Is that all sad? To Lincoln, to Teddy Roosevelt, I see they want to take Teddy Roosevelt's down too. They're trying to figure out why. They don't know. Nobody knows. They're trying to take away our culture. They're trying to take away our history. And our weak leaders, they do it overnight. And this is where, these things have been there for 150 years, 100 years. You go back to a university and it's gone. Weak people. He segues this a lot and does this kind of, free association where these mythical people who want to take down Teddy Roosevelt's statue are the same that are actually going after all these Confederate statues, which is the real conversation that he's talking about here. And he has this ridiculous idea that somehow, George Washington and Robert E. Lee are the same person in our history. And it's so far off from anything that makes like rational sense to the educated. But again, to a lot of his folks who don't have any idea or don't, kind of hate all those people who lord their intelligence over them. And they're, you know all that book stuff, don't you? I'm going to go vote how I want. They don't care. For this thing, and I think I ran across this a long time ago when this debate was kind of kicking up before. But there's, just on the whole Confederate monument thing, this, for me, this ends the whole discussion, right? Let me read you this. As regards the erection of such a monument as is contemplated, my conviction is that however grateful it would be to the feelings of the South, the attempt in the present condition of the country would have the effect of retarding instead of accelerating its accomplishment, of continuing, if not adding to, the difficulties under which the Southern people labor. So basically, he's saying here, don't build statues to us and monuments. He didn't want to mark battlefields. This is from Robert E. Lee. Sorry, that was my Robert E. Lee voice. Do we have recordings? I don't think so. Anyway, he doesn't want statues of himself. And a lot of these Confederate statues and monuments, especially across the South, were put up during the Jim Crow era. And a lot of these were reminders of what place in society certain people had. We don't have our statues to our vanquished foes ever. I don't think a lot, and a lot of the way that this showed up was just unfortunate. So I think it is not erasing history, but making a more useful and hopefully an inclusive history, and that to me is a worthwhile endeavor and something we'll have to continue to work for continually as people are engaged in the public sphere and as we decide what we want to celebrate as who we are, which to me is what those public monuments do. I'm a big fan of, public statues and monuments and sculpture and that kind of culture and a lot of these. And I've seen, the ones, I remember in front of the Texas State Capitol, the people who fought and died for states' rights. And that's, it's there, and those things have been around for a long time. It's not that hard to go overboard with this stuff, and this is going to be a little bit of our segue into my quick bit on Antifa, but and I'm not associating this next little tidbit, but the whole thing ESPN did with that Robert Lee thing was just stupid. That's ridiculous. That's some corporate idiot doing something dumb. But anyway, I do think those statues, a lot of them should come down, and we can put up other more better things. I talk good sometimes when I'm on the show. If you don't understand why I can empathize a lot with the Southern concept and idea, well, give me a goddamn break, boy. I'm from Dallas. Come on. So, a quick bit on Antifa. I've seen a lot of this, and this is essentially a very loosely organized group of anarchists. When you have in your definition like a group of anarchists, organized group of anarchists? Come on. This is like libertarians running for government positions, isn't it? One of those things where you're just like, it's an oxymoron, right? You can't have an organized group of anarchists. Which is why they don't actually really... why you don't want anarchists to run things, because they don't think things need to be run, which... At a certain level, all of the things that humans have built will need human interaction to continue to function properly in an environment where humans are part of that equation. From business rules to government rules to just general society. It's going to take effort on the part of a lot of people. Anyway, so my quick bit on Antifa. This comes from a philosopher by the name of Karl Popper. Defined this paradox in 1945, which, remember Nazi time, in his book The Open Society and Its Enemies, Volume 1. This book is actually, I've read a lot of this, because I got into Popper and reading a lot of his stuff a while back. It's great, very dense, if you want to make your brain kind of hurt while you're thinking about stuff, he's definitely, and he's not incoherent, he's just very dense. And let me but he's an amazing thinker as he works through how to build a society that is always going to be built of corrupt individuals. You can't help but know that, like I was just saying, you need humans to be a part of this. You know humans are corruptible and very corrupt and abuse power. How do you then build and design a society that continues to function knowing that this is going on? And that's entirely what this work, The Open Society and Its Enemies, is about, is confronting some of these issues. One of the things that he talks about this is the paradox of tolerance. And I don't know if you've ever run into this little conversation online, but, oh, you're such an intolerant liberal. Why are you so intolerant of these white supremacists? I'm sorry, but so anyway, this is the paradox of tolerance from Karl Popper. From The Open Society and Its Enemies. And it goes thusly. It says, unlimited tolerance must lead to the disappearance of tolerance. If we extend unlimited tolerance even to those who are intolerant, if we are not prepared to defend a tolerant society against the onslaught of the intolerant, then the tolerant will be destroyed, and tolerance with them. And this is where you run into the situation of, well, let them speak, or let them hold their talk, or let them rally. Well, what are they saying? Well, they're saying that people who aren't white shouldn't have rights and should probably be killed. Should we continue to let them say this? Is this? And it's not. And there is a time when, you have to realize what you're facing and step up. So there's a whole lot of leeway that one gets in this sense, but that leeway is not unlimited. And I do think that there are a lot of folks, and this goes into the anarchist, Antifa kind of cliche, if you will, that a lot of these are folks with a lot of angst and anger. Again, we're living in a world where a lot of jobs and a lot of pathways to a stable life are disappearing, and they are disappearing across generations, both this older, not college-educated generation, and also some of the folks who also have these degrees but, aren't in a particular place where they can, those skills are needed. And so we're seeing a lot of this, and I talked a lot about various jobs that are disappearing, but again, that feeds into this same thing. It gives a purpose and meaning to say, well, what are you doing here with your life? Well, I'm standing up to the fascists. Aren't I, wonderful? What did you do in your 20s? Did you stop fascists? So, it is, and there's a lot of quotes where people are saying, what would you, if you ever wondered, what would you have done in 1933 Germany? What are you doing now? And I think a little again, this whole show, Escaping Dystopia, is that I saw a lot of this coming and saying, hey guys, we need to not do this. And now we're seeing it again. So, again, I would give a little bit of leeway to those who stand against this. And it's great to see larger rallies of people being against this kind of stuff than there are for it. But I do know that undercurrent exists everywhere. And I think you need to continue to engage these arguments as much as possible on an intellectual level when you can get to those fringes of people who are kind of talking about something. But it's like, well, what are you really saying? What do you mean by this? Are you going this direction, or are you just kind of, just saying? I will say this, as a society, though, we have a very different reaction to those people who went to rally in the city, sorry, name is spaced on me for a moment, Charlottesville, and those who rallied for the white supremacists, and there have been a number of, welcome to the internet, we have pictures of you, there's your online presence, you're a real person, and yeah, we don't want you to work here anymore. Oh, look at that, you ran a white supremacist record label? Yeah, you're gone. You were a partner in this law firm, you are no longer employed here. There's been a lot of these stories. What we haven't seen, you were part of the Antifa. I saw you kicking Nazis. You're fired. So that's not happening. So again, that's a very good sign about something of the health of our society. If you're looking for silver linings, know that there are a lot of good people. It's a matter of getting them to stand up and participate and help rebuild our country, and that's the very, very difficult part. I hate to see the whole Black Lives Matter movement being drawn into this kind of conversation. There's some great anecdotes about how much the people who run that movement, or at least who are, helping organize do this, understand that any time that there is any violence at a protest, who is A, going to be blamed for it first, and who B, is going to be targeted first as a response by the police, and it is not generally the white supremacists, and this is, the situation that they are laboring under, again, having to do more to get the same level of response from society. So there's a very different response in our society for the people who really, really out and out support this kind of stuff versus those who are standing against it, which is great. So, speaking of some other stuff, Steve Bannon is out of the White House. Glory be! Glory be! That's good news. It is. It's how much difference that's going to make, I don't know. But at the very least response, again, you're seeing that there is some sort of cognitive, pattern or, stimulus response thing that's happening in the president's mind. He can actually maybe figure out that I'm doing stuff wrong and should change it. The one thing that he can't do, and this is what kind of kills him as a politician, is he can't apologize, and he doesn't grovel real good. Whereas apologizing is probably one of the more... it seems like it would be one of the more important skill sets for a politician to be able to apologize effectively. It's just too easy to get, caught up in your own thing, but he never does, and it's unfortunate to see that. This is one of those things, again, why really, really, really we need to see this thing end in failure, because otherwise the model will be followed and copied, and we do not want that kind of stuff going on. I do think that Bannon being out isn't going to really necessarily lessen his influence on Trump, because again, the amount of media that Trump consumes and the amount and how Bannon works those angles, he might very well have the president's ear more often. I do think McMaster just had to get him out of there to get control, and also McMaster hated him, and Kelly also was not a big fan. None of them liked that kind of crap, especially Bannon's talk. So that does make one of the things that I was generally worried about of this administration a little bit less likely, the whole geopolitical realignment, because that's definitely Bannon's baby, and to see him step away, it's good news. So we'll see how that plays out, but good news. Also, so move on to some sciencey stuff. Got to go see the eclipse this week. We drove up to the great state of Wyoming. Yeah, Wyoming. It's beautiful up there. Apparently, no, it was actually quite gorgeous, and there's a lot of it. Got to see it quite a bit, but for the totality of the eclipse, I would definitely recommend 2024 is going to be your next chance across Texas and the eastern U.S. But seeing the whole thing, right, where the sun just is gone and it's just this black spot with these star things coming out of it, and it's actually night around you, and you can actually just look at it with the naked eye, and you're like, what the hell? That's so weird. It was worth it. And I heard, and this is kind of a lot of folks talking about folks who, in Denver, I guess, had like a 94, 95% without doing any effort of having to deal with a 16-hour traffic jam. You could actually see 94% of it. The way I would kind of compare that is like watching an eclipse without seeing the totality is kind of like having sex without an orgasm. I mean, yeah, it's great, but that's kind of like that's kind of the point of it. I mean, it's like running a marathon and not finishing. I don't know. I would definitely recommend it. Very, very different experience than what it sounds like a lot of other folks had. Sorry. That worked better in rehearsals. That's what they're called. I rehearsed that one. I need to work on that. So there was another U.S. Navy, to move on and finish up real quick. I think we're hitting our time limit. And the voice is losing it. There was another accident with a U.S. Navy ship. The BBC actually had a really good bit on this, that how a lot of the rest of the world is looking at this is more of a, as we in the U.S. kind of are dealing with our own self-image and the declination of that. A lot of the world has seen U.S. power through that same lens, and the fact that we can't avoid having ships run into our ships. I did see a couple of questions about whether or not this might have to do with some sort of electronic attacks on our navigational systems, which will be interesting to see how that plays out as well. But again, our president is so incredibly distracted that I don't know that he's going to deal with much of this, and I think he's tried to delegate pretty much all of it, and then we'll just blame whoever he delegates it on. The other big story I think from this week, and this is what I'm going to finish on. One of the things that, actually, two points. On our Afghan strategy, the president made it clear that we have now kind of switched from what was originally kind of the idea, I guess, of nation building to now just killing bad guys. Which will, it's pretty expensive in a place where it's really expensive to kill bad guys, and both killing them helps generate more. As the Soviet Union learned a long time ago, and other people have as well throughout history. Apparently the Soviets are also, the Russians I should say, not quite a Soviet Union yet, have also apparently started arming a few of the Afghan forces that they want to see mess up our strategy. So the thing I did want to talk about, let me read you this real quick. During Barack Obama's 29 months at helm of ISIS war, we tracked 855 alleged civilian casualty events, which likely killed 2,298 to 3,398 civilians. Air Wars tweeted to the group's official account. In Donald Trump's first 7 months as president, we've tracked 1,196 alleged incidents in which we assessed that at least 2,819 to 4,529 civilians have died. So in the 7 months that he's been in office, he apparently has issued orders leading to more civilian deaths than Obama did during 2.5 years, essentially, of the ISIS campaign. This is not really being covered much at all, and I know that it's not something that, at this point, I think that even the 30% of Americans who support Trump would find any kind of issue with whatsoever. I do think it helps, or should help, to steel the resolve of those standing against him and continue to understand that there is real world consequences for what's going on right now, and they are significant and adding up. Sorry, that was my happy note at the end of the show, but it's a real thing that's going on, and I know a lot of people are burned out on the whole thing, and it's tough to stick with it and resist and impeach as all the resignation letters are continuing to implore people to happen. But I do think people need to continue to do both of those and keep working. I do think it is working, and at the very least, he's trying to adjust. I don't think he can. It would take this massive apology that he won't ever try to attempt to repair the situation, and this concept of real and actual unity and empathy that you have to have if you want to lead groups of diverse people. You have to have that ability to care enough to connect, and he just doesn't appear to want to do it, and doesn't think he needs to politically. So anyway, with that, and now I'm kind of losing the voice and coughing and moving along. So I would like to thank everybody who dropped by tonight, and it's been good to talk again, as always. It's nice to do my thing and have fun with it. So thanks to everybody who dropped by, and I will see you, as it were, all again probably next week. Kind of settling into a little rhythm, and seems to be going okay. So I'm still having fun. All right. Peace out, y'all. Have a good night. And word to the word.